When I was a little girl, I used to dream that one day I'd live in a fairy tale house, the kind with a porch swing that creaked in the wind, and a man who kissed me on the forehead before I fell asleep. And for a time I had that. My husband, Walter, was my calm through every storm, steadfast, loving, a solid rock in a world that never stopped shifting. But the storms always find a way back. 6 months ago, I lost him. A heart attack, sudden and cruel, took him from me before I even had the chance to say goodbye. He was only 60. I remember the way he smiled that morning, coffee in hand, joking about a leak in the kitchen faucet. And then he was gone. I didn't have time to fall apart. My son, Daniel, needed me. Or maybe I needed him. He moved back into the house shortly after the funeral. Said he wanted to be there just until things settled. But we both knew there was something deeper anchoring him here. He had just broken up with his girlfriend. A quiet split, messy in the way heartbreak always is, and though he didn't say much, I could see it in his eyes. The pain, the confusion, the silence that followed love when it leaves without warning. Daniel is 23 now. He works from home, building websites and branding for clients scattered across different time zones. He does yoga every morning in the living room, his lean frame stretching beneath the early light. Sometimes I watch him from the kitchen doorway, pretending to clean or brew another pot of coffee, but really, I'm just watching. The way his movements echo strength and vulnerability all at once. The way he breathes through the tension. He looks so much like his father it hurts. But he's not his father. He's softer, more present. He hugs me often, long embraces that wrap around my bones and settle deep. He brushes the hair from my face when I'm too tired to do it myself after a long shift at the restaurant. He calls me princess sometimes, like it's a private joke between us, and I laugh, but every time he says it, something tender stirs inside me. Something I'm not ready to name. I made you chamomile, he said last night, appearing in the doorway like a warm shadow. I'd been sitting on the porch, letting the silence wrap around me like a quilt too thin for the night. You know that's my favorite, I said, accepting the mug. I know everything about you, he replied with a wink before settling beside me. We sat like that for a long time, shoulder to shoulder. His hand brushed against mine once, and I didn't move away. Neither did he. This morning, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. I saw the gray peeking through my curls, the fine lines gathering around my eyes. And yet, I didn't feel old. Not today. I felt watched. Not in a way that unsettled me, but in a way that made me feel seen. Daniel came into the kitchen as I tied my apron. He hugged me from behind, his arms wrapping around my waist as if it were the most natural thing in the world. You're warm, he said, resting his chin on my shoulder. And you're clingy, I teased, but I didn't move. Good, he murmured. I turned slightly, just enough to see his face. He was smiling, but there was something unreadable in his eyes, like a question he hadn't asked yet. Or maybe one I didn't want to answer. Something is changing. I feel it in the way he lingers a second too long, in the way our silences now carry weight instead of comfort. I feel it in the way I've started dressing with more care before I leave for work, in the way I catch myself watching the curve of his jaw when he speaks. I shouldn't. I know I shouldn't. But I'm starting to wonder what it means when the person who brings you peace is also the one who makes your heart race. And I can't shake the feeling that whatever happens next, whatever this is, it will change everything. The morning began like any other. The soft hum of the refrigerator. The scent of freshly brewed coffee wafting through the house. I stood barefoot by the stove, cracking eggs into a pan, still half lost in the warmth of my dreams when Daniel padded into the kitchen, shirtless and sleepy-eyed. Morning, he murmured, running a hand through his messy hair. I didn't look at him right away. I couldn't, not with the sun painting his bare chest in gold and shadow. Morning, I replied softly, placing 2 slices of toast into the old toaster. Coffee's hot. He came up behind me, that familiar presence, and reached over my shoulder for a mug. His body brushed against mine, bare skin against the cotton of my shirt, and for a split second, my breath caught. Yoga, he asked as he poured himself a cup. Come stretch with me today. It'll be good for your back. I turned to him, surprised. With you? He smiled, boyish and earnest, but there was something in his eyes, steady, calm, expectant.
Yeah.
You always say you're stiff from work. I'll go easy on you. I hesitated. He'd never asked me before, not like this. I watched him sip his coffee, the muscles in his throat shifting subtly, and suddenly the kitchen felt too small, too warm. But I nodded. Okay, just this once. The living room had been transformed. He'd rolled out 2 yoga mats, lit a stick of sandalwood incense, and opened the blinds just enough to let the morning light slant across the floor. Shoes off, he said with a grin, already lowering himself to the mat with practiced ease. I kicked off my slippers and sat down, awkward at first, unsure of how to position my limbs. But Daniel didn't laugh or tease. He moved beside me, his voice soft, his guidance gentle. Just breathe, Mom. We started with stretches. His hands would occasionally guide mine, adjusting my arms, straightening my back. Every touch sent a quiet ripple through me. Not because it was inappropriate, but because it was careful, aware. You're doing good, he whispered once, his fingers lightly grazing my spine. Keep breathing. Let go. I exhaled shakily. The poses became more intimate, more exposed. Downward dog, child's pose, then a slow, winding twist that brought my body close to his. At one point, our faces were inches apart, both of us folded forward, gazing toward each other through a curtain of breath and quiet tension. He looked at me, and I looked back. Neither of us spoke. His hand, resting on the floor, shifted ever so slightly, just close enough that our fingertips touched. Not clasped, not held, just touching.
Barely.
Deliberately. The room stilled, and in that fragile space between moments, I felt it. The shift. The breaking of something unspoken. His eyes held mine, and I saw something in them that terrified and warmed me all at once. Something that wasn't childlike. Something that wasn't motherly. Something human. I pulled away first, my breath unsteady as I pretended to adjust the hem of my shirt. Maybe that's enough yoga for today, I said, my voice quiet. Daniel sat back on his heels, his gaze unreadable. Sure. We didn't say much after that. I busied myself in the kitchen. He retreated to his room. But the air in the house had changed. And I knew, without needing to ask, that we had stepped onto a path that couldn't be undone. Not by words. Not by silence. Only by time. The rest of the day passed in a soft blur. I moved through my chores distractedly, folding laundry with half-thoughts and staring at the television without really watching. But in my chest, something hummed. A quiet, persistent flicker, like a candle that had just been lit after years in the dark. Something had awakened in me. Not lust, not romance, but detention. And it was all because of the way Daniel looked at me on that mat. The way his voice dropped when he told me to breathe. The way our fingers brushed, accidentally, intentionally, who could tell anymore? By evening, I found myself in the kitchen again, but this time not out of habit. I wanted to cook for him, not just dinner. Something special. Something that said, I see you seeing me. A dish he'd remember. A moment that might stretch a little further than comfort allowed. I made seared duck breast with cherry port reduction, something I hadn't made since Walter was alive. And rosemary roasted potatoes, glazed carrots in brown sugar and butter. I even lit a candle. Just one. Just because. When Daniel came out of his room and stepped into the kitchen, he paused. Whoa, he murmured, his eyes wide. What's all this? I smiled, brushing my slightly damp curls away from my face. Thought I'd try something fancy. You've been so sweet lately. I just wanted to say thank you. He looked at me with something deep, something that wasn't quite surprise, but close. You didn't have to go all out for me. I wanted to, I said. He walked over and placed his hand lightly at the small of my back. You're amazing, you know that? The praise bloomed inside me like heat under my skin. We sat together, and I watched him eat. His eyes closed as he savored the duck, and I felt an unexpected thrill in my chest. I wanted that look. I needed that look. I'm not even kidding, he said, his voice low and reverent. This is the best thing I've eaten all year. Good, I replied, taking a sip of wine to hide my flushed cheeks. I was hoping you'd say that. We drank slowly after dinner, letting the wine stretch the moment. It wasn't about getting tipsy. It was about letting the words come softer, letting our bodies relax, letting the distance between us shorten. At one point, I laughed at something he said and touched his arm. I didn't mean to linger, but I didn't move away quickly either. He looked at my hand, then at me, and just like that, the space between us was charged again. We were still on opposite sides of the couch, but it didn't feel that way. I think I'll join you for yoga again tomorrow, I said gently. His eyes lit up, not just with surprise this time, but something else. Pleasure. I'd like that, he replied. Then, with a playful grin and a quiet edge in his voice, he added, let's improve the dog pose. I nearly choked on my sip of wine, coughing softly behind my hand. He just smiled, and I could feel the shift again. Something invisible pulling us toward each other, neither of us naming it, neither of us backing away. When I turned off the lights later and stood at the kitchen sink rinsing our wine glasses, I caught my reflection in the window. The woman staring back at me wasn't the grieving wife. She wasn't just the mother. She was curious, aware, and undeniably alive. Tomorrow, we'd return to the yoga mat. But tonight, I'd dream of what it felt like to be seen again. Really seen. And I'd wonder just how close we were to crossing a line neither of us had dared to name. The house was still when I woke, bathed in a soft blush of dawn that filtered through the blinds, painting the hallway in quiet golden lines. I padded barefoot to the kitchen, my nightgown brushing my calves, heart fluttering with something I didn't yet dare name. Daniel was already up. I saw him through the open arch of the living room, kneeling on the mat, shirtless again, his spine long and smooth as he folded forward into child's pose. The morning light kissed his shoulders, sculpting every line, every breath. He turned his head just slightly, sensing me, and smiled. Good morning, beautiful sleeper, he said, his voice low and gentle. I laughed, maybe too quietly. You start without me? I was warming up, he replied, lifting into a smooth stretch. Come here. We'll take it slow. I stepped onto the mat beside him, suddenly conscious of how thin the fabric of my top felt. My breath caught as I reached overhead into a stretch, my body already remembering yesterday's touch. Let's go through the flow, he murmured. And we did. Side by side, we moved, slow and deliberate. Warrior pose, forward fold, upward reach. Then the dog pose. Downward, he whispered, his voice brushing my spine as he came close. Let's improve it. I folded forward onto my hands and feet, hips raised, breath shaky. He was behind me. I couldn't see him, but I felt him. His presence, warm and focused. The air around us thickened. His hands touched my hips lightly, adjusting, guiding. A pause. Then just the whisper of his breath at my shoulder. There, he said. Now breathe. I exhaled sharply, my palms pressing harder into the mat. His hands didn't move. They stayed, steady, firm but not demanding. Not yet. The silence between us stretched impossibly thin. You're doing really well, he said, and his voice was no longer just soft, it was reverent. As if I were something sacred. I rose slowly, standing upright again, turning to face him. We stood so close now. I could see the stubble beginning on his jaw, the gentle curve of his lips, parted slightly from exertion or something else. His chest rose and fell with quiet tension. So did mine. And then, neither of us moved. Not away, not toward, just stillness. And the sound of 2 heartbeats filling the room. I think I need water, I whispered at last, my voice trembling like a leaf. He nodded, almost too slowly. But as I stepped past him, his hand gently grazed mine, Just a breath of contact. Just enough to say, I'm here. I feel it too.
And I did.
The breathless ache of something unfolding between us, too deep for denial now. Not lust. Not impulse. But something far more dangerous. Recognition. And tomorrow's sun might not rise on the same world again. I stood in the kitchen, gripping a glass of water like it could anchor me to something solid. But the cool against my palm did nothing to settle the slow simmer in my chest. My skin still hummed where Daniel's hands had touched me, innocent only in theory, electric in execution. He stepped into the doorway just then, towel slung over his shoulder, a bead of sweat tracing the line of his collarbone. You did great, he said, casual, too casual. You're more flexible than you give yourself credit for. I smiled tightly, unsure how to hold my body under his gaze anymore. Everything felt too visible. You're a good teacher. That made him chuckle, and something in the sound curled around my ribs. I was thinking, he began, pausing to run a hand through his hair. Maybe tomorrow we could try a partner pose. I blinked. A what? A joint position, he said, stepping further into the room. One that helps deepen trust and closeness. The word closeness hung between us, like a spark ready to jump. I couldn't breathe for a moment. Trust, I echoed, trying to play it off with a faint smirk. He nodded, slower now.
Yeah.
It's called the heart opener. We sit back to back. Let our weight rest on each other. It teaches balance, connection. Connection. That word did something to me. Inside, I boiled. I turned to the sink, pretending to rinse my glass. But my hands were shaking. You sure you want to try that with me? I asked, my voice softer than I intended. He didn't answer right away. I felt him step closer behind me. The heat of him. The quiet of him. The way his silence wasn't empty, but full of waiting. I do, he said. And that was all. I turned slowly. He was standing just a little too close. Not inappropriately, but not like before. There was no smile on his face now. No teasing. Just a steady, knowing calm. And a gaze that didn't flinch. I'm not sure I began, then stopped. Because I didn't know what I was unsure of. I wasn't scared. I wasn't confused. I was awake. And that was somehow more terrifying. I just want you to feel supported, he said gently. You've held so much for so long. Something in my chest cracked. Because it was true.
And he saw it.
He saw me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about tomorrow. About that pose. About sitting back to back with him. Our spines aligned. Our breaths shared. Our balance dependent on the other. What would it feel like to lean into him completely? What would it feel like to not pull away? I don't know how this happened, but I know that after tomorrow, something will. Morning came on soft feet. The sky outside was washed in pale lavender, the kind of quiet beauty that felt almost staged, as if the world was holding its breath too. I pulled my hair into a loose twist and slipped into leggings and a thin tee, my fingers trembling slightly as I brushed them over the fabric. He was already there. Daniel sat cross-legged on the mat, facing the window, a single candle lit beside him. The scent of sandalwood drifted faintly through the air. Peaceful. Intentional. He turned at the sound of my footsteps and smiled. Warm, calm, grounding. Ready. I nodded. We sat back to back. His spine met mine, his warmth seeping through the thin layers between us. At first it felt odd, too intimate, too exposed. But then we began to breathe together. Slow, deep inhales. Matching exhales. The rhythm fell into place like something remembered, not learned. His shoulders rose with mine. Our heads tilted in the same direction. The muscles along my spine softened into his. I could feel the steady strength in his body, holding me. Now let go, he whispered. And I did. I leaned. He caught me. Our bodies melted into each other. Our balance shifting together. I couldn't tell where I ended, and he began. Time slowed. We stayed like that for a while, longer than necessary. Not speaking. Not moving. Just being. And when we finally turned to face each other, The breath between us felt impossibly small. His hand reached out, hesitant then certain, and touched the side of my face. I didn't stop him. I couldn't. The kiss came like a question we'd been avoiding for too long.
Soft. Still.
Barely there. But it landed like thunder in my chest. He pulled back first, only slightly, eyes searching mine for permission, apology, something unnamed. I touched his cheek, breath catching. I didn't mean to, he began, voice cracking. I know, I said. But I didn't move away. Neither did he. The candle beside us flickered. And I knew, in that impossible moment suspended between what was right and what was real, nothing would ever be the same.